Joe Crowley, the incumbent Democrat who was defeated by Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is now, unsurprisingly, a lobbyist working to defeat Biden's tax hikes on the rich. Now, those tax hikes on the rich, which would mean that wealthy people in the country would actually pay their fair share of taxes, is meant to raise the revenue necessary to pay for his Build Back Better agenda. Now, Securities Industry and Financial Markets Association, or SIFMA, has deployed Crowley to court his old colleagues as Democrats finalize legislation to implement President Joe Biden's Build Back Better initiative, which seeks a fairer tax system and greater revenue to pay for incredibly important programs like expanded Medicare coverage, universal pre-K, and other domestic priorities. Now, starting in July, this lobbying group, SIFMA, whose members range from BlackRock and JP Morgan to Amazon Web Services and IBM, hired Crowley and other lobbyists at law firm Squire Patton Boggs for just $30,000. That's all it takes, $30,000 to fight to defeat things that would fundamentally and materially improve Americans' lives. That's all it costs. They could probably get away with paying a lot less. Now, his lobbying, along with the lobbying of other corporate interests, is unfortunately working. So, for instance, on September 24th, Texas Democratic Representatives Vicente Gonzalez, Henry Cuellar, and Philemon Vela sent House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer a letter criticizing the proposed tax increases on corporations' foreign profits that Crowley is now targeting for SIFMA. Crowley's former leadership PAC donated to all three congressmen's campaigns over his time in Congress, and Vela was a vocal supporter of Crowley's leadership ambitions. Now, what is the business community hyper-focused on? Now, of course, they don't want to raise taxes overall, but there is a tax that applies to multinational corporations known as the GILTI tax. Literally, it's called the GILTI tax, okay? It's the global, intangible, low-taxed income, okay? So the Build Back Better Act, which passed the House Ways and Means Committee just days before the letter was sent, raises the GILT tax from 10.5% to 16.5%. And by the way, that's not even really going too far. Progressive Democrats and even Biden himself wanted to go much higher. This is a modest increase. The modest increase is lower than the rate sought by Biden and a majority of congressional Democrats who want to equalize the GILTI tax rate and the domestic corporate tax rate, now at 21%. And by the way, I just want to quickly note that this is about that GILTI tax is meant to ensure that there's at least a minimum tax paid by these multinational corporations, okay? Yeah.
So they hide their money abroad, not just in the Cayman Islands and tax shelters like that. That's more for individuals, but they do the double Irish and the Dutch sandwich. These are tax loopholes. I know, tax loopholes so delicious that they have names. You could order them on a menu. Oh, I'd like to evade taxes with the Dutch sandwich, and I'll throw in a double Irish there, okay? And so that's how well known. Now, remember, before Trump came in, corporate tax rate is 35%. Trump butchers it to 21%. That means all of us have to pay more taxes because corporations have decided to pay less taxes, and they legally bribed Trump and his other Republican cronies to do that, and Trump was thrilled to do that as a populist. Hilarious, hilarious. Okay, now at the time, you're gonna love this. Joe Crowley, the Democrat, and he was the number 4 Democrat, and a lot of people thought he was in line to be Speaker of the House, said that Trump's tax plan was, quote, a tax scam, and that it would only benefit, quote, the largest, wealthiest multinational corporations in the history of the world. So my God, that Democrat, he didn't want that tax cut for corporations all the way down to 21%, that's a crime. So now Crowley's arguing 16.5% for this particular tax for those same multinational corporations is too high, that it should be 10.5%. That Trump was too stingy. Trump should have given away more to corporations. Now, Anna, isn't it amazing that it turns out, I mean, this is a wild coincidence. It's because corporations have now hired him to be their boy and to be their servant. So he goes and he tries to, his literal job is to try to corrupt other sitting Democrats. And he does that through legalized bribes. Cuellar, you get 3,000. Everybody gets Vaseline or a car or $3,000 checks. This is like the Oprah version, right?
Oh yeah. I'm like,
you get $2,800. You get 20. You remember that old thing with the
Yes, I do. I do.
Okay.
Remember that.
Anyway, so.
But Cenk, hold on. I just think. I want to make sure you're remembering Crowley's previous statements correctly. So why don't we just quickly go back to Crowley in January of 2018 on these taxes and what he had to say about them.
Look, at the end of the day, this was a tax scam. It was not a tax overhaul. It was not, as the Republicans initially said, they wanted to fix the tax code in the United States. They fixed it, all right. They fixed it for the largest, wealthiest multinational corporations in the history of the world.
If we get 3% tax growth and real wage growth.
We missed an opportunity here to invest in America. What we had is the refinancing of the House of America. They've taken out of the House $1.5 trillion plus interest. And instead of investing in college tuition for the kids or putting a new roof on the infrastructure of the house, they gave that wealth to the wealthiest multinational corporations in the history of the world.
Oh no, yeah, you were right. You remembered correctly. He referred to those Trump-era tax cuts for corporations as a massive scam. And then after he got paid by corporations to basically rally in support of those tax cuts, he did just that.
Okay, so guys, what we tell you is a scam is corporate Republicans and corporate Democrats pretending to have real policy positions and going back and forth and then robbing you blind together, and that's called bipartisanship in Washington. We told you that and we said, hey, there's this woman named Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I remember the sidebar I had, it said Alexandria the Great. Before she'd ever won a thing, before she'd won the primary, I said, she can make an impact. Crowley, on the other hand, will sell you out day and night. Don't believe a word he says. He's just going to turn into a lobbyist if he loses. Now, gee, I wonder who was right and who was wrong. Meanwhile, what did mainstream media tell you? Crowley's a beloved Democrat who's opposing Trump. He's part of the resistance. And he is fighting back against corporations and their tax cuts. Now, the jury's in. He says 21% that Trump did. It was way too low. We got to bring it way too high. We got to bring it down to 10.5% for the people, the corporations hiding their money abroad. This is who corporate politicians are. Do not believe the mainstream media when they tell you that they're having a battle of ideas or principles. They don't care about that at all. They are deeply corrupt. He never cared about the people of Queens. All he cared about is the money. And anyone who tells you otherwise is not a real reporter. If they tell you, oh, no, that's scandalous. Manchin and Sinema and Crowley and all these beloved corporate Democrats, they're having an exchange of ideas. Understand, oh, I got it, that guy's a paid propagandist. That guy works for corporations to try to trick me into manufacturing consent. The jury's in. He's an obvious crook, just like we told you. And by the way, every crook that's taken money from him in the House now, Cuellar, one of the worst corporate Democrats, and he's a sitting US House member, they're also crooks. And they take that money and then they say, oh, Trump's tax cuts are great. More tax cuts for our corporate donors. That's who they are. They are the scam. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.